Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's QA Wolf Conversation, Innovations in Evaluating AI Agent Performance. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, and over the next 20 or so minutes, we're going to be talking about the next step of building a multi-agent AI system, which is how exactly do you evaluate how well each agent is executing in its function or doing its job. With that said, I'd like to welcome the real star of today's presentation. He's our subject matter expert, and he's an engineering lead here at QA Wolf, Yurij Mikhalevich. Yuri, welcome.
Hey Caleb, thank you for having me today.
My pleasure. It's always great to have the opportunity to sit, listen, learn, and talk with you about some of these very important topics in engineering. With that said, though, let's go ahead and give folks who are tuning in a quick sneak peek at what all we'll be covering today. So first up, we're going to be answering the question, why exactly is evaluating AI agents challenging to begin with? Then secondly, we're going to talk about how we're using emerging frameworks to evaluate agents. In the third section, we'll move on to talk about the innovations that we're building here to measure AI performance at QA Wolf. And then lastly, we'll talk about how you and the team are preparing for future enhancements. With that said, let's really jump into that first topic, though. Why exactly is evaluating AI agents so challenging? And Yuri, I understand this is not just a challenge that's unique to QA Wolf. It's in fact been a major challenge for a lot of engineers out there. So maybe you can tell me a little bit more about it. Why exactly has evaluating agents been a challenge?
Thank you very much for this question. It's an amazing question to start our conversation today. And this indeed was a great challenge for a ton of companies and a lot of different engineering teams. Any engineering team that builds an agent needs to understand how well does it perform, how well does it solve the problem. And to do this, every engineering team collects information about how the agent performs in production, pass-fail rate. This can be done in a lot of different ways. Different teams collect different metrics, which depends on the nature of the agent. But in the end, every team collects data that lets them understand whether they're solving the problem they set out to solve or not. And this is crucial for every team to understand. But collecting this data and knowing this is not enough to drive day-to-day decisions that contribute to how we improve the agent. And this is because the data we collect about the agent performance in the wild, meaning in production, is noisy. And it is noisy because in the real world, the nature of the problems the agent has to solve differs a lot. The complexity of these problems differs a lot day from day. So on one day, the agent can be solving a lot of very easy problems. On the other day, it can be solving a lot of very hard problems. And if we'll be looking at the data on how did it solve them on a daily basis, we will not be able to make decisions and we will not be able to understand whether the change we shipped yesterday improved or regressed the agent. To solve this problem, namely to understand whether the changes the team makes improve or regress the agent, a lot of engineering teams design tests that run in isolated environments, and these tests often and traditionally focus on individual agent actions.
Right. And I imagine, just to sort of following that train of thought, the thing I'm thinking of, there's probably a gap between those controlled and uncontrolled environments. And, I understand that even the smallest changes can create unexpected results throughout an entire session. From your perspective, is focusing on those individual actions really enough to solve for the problem?
There is indeed a huge gap between the controlled and uncontrolled environment with this traditional approach. And it's by no means enough to look at the individual actions. And it's actually easy to understand if you think about it, because agents in the real world, they solve really complex problems. And to solve these problems, they need to take a series of actions. And looking at how agent performs taking each individual action never paints the whole picture. There are a lot of cases where an agent, for example, needs to take an action that would in isolation look bad, but in a sequence of actions, this one bad actions, so-called bad action, Let's let the agent explore the environment, collect data, and then make the agent that wouldn't have been possible otherwise. Also, there are a lot of scenarios when agent was taking a sequence of seemingly good actions, but still failed to deliver and failed to solve the problem. And to understand why this happens and to be able to properly assess agents, it's crucial to take a look at how agent solves real world problems end to end and how well does it perform in solving them.
Right. Well, I thank you for providing those details. And you're talking about, end-to-end problem solving there. I mean, I'm thinking about the QA Wolf perspective because we are trying to solve real-world problems from customers here at QA Wolf. So what have you and the team identified as the biggest problem for evaluating agents, maybe in comparison to those broader issues you just talked about?
To be honest, all of the issues I have just described were relevant to us. But if you will ask me to pick any explicit problems that were really important to us, I would say that the most important problem that we were solving was to understand how the changes to our system, to our agents that we make day to day impact the agents. So we wanted and we needed to understand whether the change we made now improves or regresses the agent as soon as possible without having to do long-term evaluation on production, long-term evaluation in the wild. And another problem that we were solving, which is kind of related to the first one, is when looking at the failed session, at the problem that the agent failed to solve in the wild, we needed to understand which action or which sequence of actions contributed the most to it failing. So where did it all go wrong?
Hmm. Right. So, I mean, it sounds like, just sort of boiling it down, look, the traditional evaluation methods that you referenced earlier, I mean, they may work well for predictable environments. But again, if you're trying to look at those real world scenarios, those real world scenarios are going to be a lot more complex. There's going to be a lot of interdependencies that are mixed if you're doing those traditional methods. Now, I understand that because of the difficulty of finding the exact cause of the performance problems, you and the team have come with a very specific solution that fine tunes sort of how we're able to evaluate our AI agents. So for those of you who maybe aren't as familiar, here at QA Wolf, our AI system's job is to create and maintain automated tests for our customers to achieve 80+% test coverage. And to do that reliably, we develop training scenarios that evaluate the system itself. And because we are building an agent for the real world, we really need to understand its performance, or to be more specific here, the accuracy of the test. So, Yuri, turning back to you, how did you and the team approach solving for this?
We've built a really amazing framework which incorporates a set of methods that we've developed. And in the center of this framework is the idea that we call gym scenarios. Gym scenarios are heavily inspired by the OpenAI gym. Each gym scenario is a specifically and carefully designed scenario which mirrors a real world problem that our agent has to solve in the wild. And each gym scenario is exists in its own isolated environment, which allows us to evaluate our agents by running them through these gym scenarios and monitoring and looking at how do they perform when they're being tasked with them.
Right, so I want to learn a little bit more about gym scenarios here, and I appreciate you brought like a really helpful slide for people like myself who maybe aren't as familiar with the concept of gym scenarios. So, looking at the information on the slide here, think about athletics, for example. We prepare agents, or in this case, athletes, for real world tasks, or if you're thinking about with the athletics analogy, it's competitions, by simulating real world conditions, observing them to execute plays, again, the sports analogy, which are actually scenarios, what we're talking about with the AI, and then tracking their progress. And if an agent performs well, or in a training scenario, but maybe struggles in that real world scenario, it lets you know that we need to adjust our training methods in order to get closer or better and more effective. So, Yuri, I mean, much like a coach who is studying the athlete's performance, constantly updating the training regimen to make sure that the athlete is the very best, I imagine you and the team are collecting a great deal of data for this framework. So, how does the QA Wolf team use this data?
In short, we use it to drive the agent improvements. But to understand how does this work, I need to first explain how do we collect all this data. So every night we task our agents to solve a variety of these gym scenarios. And during this period, we monitor them, we assess how well do they do, we collect a lot of data. We not just look at how well do they perform, we also look at which agents contributed more to the success of the particular gym scenario, which actions do these agents perform to achieve the success or failure when it happens. And then once we collected all of this variety of data, we evaluate it and decide which improvements to make and to which parts of the system.
All right, and again, my understanding is that there are some innovations that you've brought to this very specific gym scenario approach. So maybe you could, give me a little bit of the secret sauce, or let me know what you guys are doing. What is the main innovation you and the team are bringing to the gym scenarios approach to evaluation?
Yeah, thank you for asking this. So the main innovation I'm really proud of, and which is really essential to how we evaluate the agent's performance, is our weighting system. And the idea behind the weighting system is that we assign a number to every gym scenario, which corresponds to how relevant this gym scenario to the tasks that agent has to solve in the real world. In other words, if an agent has to solve task A a lot, and we have a gym scenario that represents this task A, this gym scenario will have a really high weight, as opposed to a gym scenario that represents task B, which our agent has to solve less often. Having these weights allows us to focus on particular gym scenarios and improve them better, and really make sure that they capture the essence of the real world problems. It also guides the agent improvements, so we understand that if the agent fails, let's say on two different gym scenarios, we will make sure to prioritize the one fixing its behavior on the one that's more relevant to the real world problem, so that our agents is encountering more often rather than less.
Right. And again, I appreciate providing a lot more context about these weighted gym scenarios. And maybe just to clarify, how does the weighted gym scenario differ from the more general gym scenarios that you mentioned initially?
Let me reiterate. So, first of all, both gym scenarios are designed, like even without the weights, are designed to capture the essence of the problems that the agent has to solve in the real world, real problems that they encounter daily. But the extra addition of the weight to the weighted gym scenarios allows us, first of all, to assess the agent more carefully, because when we are running our evaluations, we use these weights to adjust the score that we compute to understand the agent performance. And this final score, weight adjusted, much better describes the real world performance of the agents. The other two aspects are really important, and they can be described as, first of all, we prioritize improving gym scenarios that have higher weight. And secondly, when we see agent lacking in one department or another, we are prioritizing fixes, which first of all benefit more highly weighted scenarios.
Right. Well, thanks for elaborating on all of that, Yuri. And just to sort of recap it to make sure I'm understanding it, sounds like weighted gym scenarios are useful for representing real world importance, number one. Number two is focusing on individual scenarios. And then lastly, it sounds like guiding agent improvements. Now, Earlier, you mentioned that the system evaluates and improves itself continuously over time. And I want to dig further into that because in one of our earlier webinars covering how you and the team built a multi agent AI system, the senior director of AI here at QA Wolf, Nishant Shukla, talked about how you and the team were training the AI with weighted gym scenarios so that it continuously improves and gets better and better at that specific tasks. So I want to get under the hood there and understand a little bit about the how that works. So, Yuri, how does the evaluation in the real world contribute to the reweighing of future scenarios?
Thank you very much for this question. Let me elaborate on this topic in more detail. When we run our agent in production, we collect a ton of different data and ton of metrics about how it performs, which kind of problems it has to solve, which kind of actions it performs to solve these problems. Then, once we collected all of this data, we split these problems and these scenarios into subtasks, and we classify each of the subtasks into the corresponding gym scenario. Then we fed this information back into the weight. And this allows us to make sure that our gym and gym score is always kept up to date with the problems that the agent has to solve, even if these problems are shifting with time, which is crucial to ensure that we are improving agent in the right direction.
Right. And again, I think maybe important note here, just to clarify, to make sure I understand, you talking about setting benchmarks there. How do you know those benchmarks are accurate?
There are a few things to it. So first thing is to ensure that everything I have just described and everything I have just explained, you do really well and really rigorously, starting from collecting the data and metrics properly, to updating the weights continuously and correctly, to designing gym scenarios in a way that is really well and really captures the essence of the problems that the agent has to solve in the real world. And by doing all of this, and there is actually one more thing that I need to mention that contributes a lot to us making sure that we can measure agents' performance in the real world by using our gym scenarios. And this thing is the weight for the missing gym scenario. So the thing is, every time our agent fails to solve a problem in the real world, we increment our missing gym scenario weight. And when we evaluate the agent, we not just adjust the final score based on the individual gym scenarios weights, we also consider in the final score this missing gym scenario weights. And considering it allows us to really capture in this final score the real world performance of our agent relevant to the problem it has to solve.
Right. So, I mean, again, I appreciate you bringing that the sort of those missing weights back into the fold here. And it sounds like most experimentation here at QA Wolf, we let data be the guide to our path forward. Well, when I think this thought process is really going to take us right into our final section here, which is what you and the team are doing to prepare for future enhancements. So, given the continuous improvement of the process, I imagine your approach to evaluating agents is only going to get better and better over time through new developments. So, Yuri, what are some of the other advancements and developments you and the team are planning?
Thank you for asking this. There are a few things we're working on right now. Most of them are related to automating the process I have just described and explained in detail. First of all, we want to automatically classify the sessions that we capture that our agent performs in production to be able to completely automatically update the weights and reweigh our gym scenarios. Once we do this, we will be able to also automatically identify areas where our agent doesn't perform as well. So we'll be able to identify gaps automatically, like very specific areas, and fix them. This will be an expansion of our missing gem scenario score. And for both of these tasks, we are planning to utilize helicones, scoring working to do all of the heavy lifting. The other thing that will be unlocked by realizing the previous ones will be that we will be able to disable or even completely eliminate gym scenarios which are no longer relevant. This can happen by a variety of reasons. The most common one being the problem space that our agent works with day to day shifted, and some of the gym scenarios aren't relevant anymore. They don't capture the problems that agent has to solve day to day. We can identify them automatically using the weight system and then eliminate. And last but not least, we are also working on improving our real-time world performance reporter, real world performance reporter, and real world metrics collector. And the idea here is that we know that we have some gaps with how we collect metrics, and we want to identify and close them.
All right, so it sounds like, again, closing those gaps and automating a lot of these processes is pretty top of mind in terms of what you all are looking at next. So I appreciate you giving us a little sneak peek, and I like to bring it back to that fitness, metaphor that we used earlier. Much like the athlete who's trying to continuously improve, here at QA Wolf, we're also constantly improving our performance so that we're ready each and every game day, which is every day for our customers. With that said, I know that we've introduced several innovative ideas on how to improve how we evaluate AI here at QA Wolf, and these innovations will significantly enhance the accuracy of our performance measurements, allowing us to optimize our agent behavior more effectively. And I want to bring it back to what we're all about here at QA Wolf, which is our customers. These improvements are in service of using QA Wolf's AI to achieve our ultimate goal of 80+% test coverage for our customers. Yuri, I want to turn it back to you here as we start to wind down. What sort of an impact have these innovations in agent evaluation had on testing here at QA Wolf?
These innovations had a great impact at QA Wolf, and I want to highlight three main areas of impact. First of all, these innovations allowed us to identify issues and regressions with our AI systems really, really quickly and fix them really, really quickly. The second innovation is about understanding whether changes we are making are beneficial or not immediately. And this allowed us to confidently ship improvements to our AI systems every day. And the third innovation is about identifying and highlighted certain areas of improvement which are most relevant to the problems we are tackling and most relevant to our customers, and prioritize and address these areas as soon as possible. And also, I want to additionally stress that we remain committed to making our testing process more precise and align with real-world needs as best as possible.
Unfortunately, we are out of time for today. Now, before we close out, for everyone who's tuning in, I did want to share a little more information about how the multi-agent AI that Yuri and team have been working on is being put to use. So here at QA Wolf, we are revolutionizing software quality assurance with results-based end-to-end test automation. And by aligning incentives with customer success and leveraging that cutting-edge AI technology that we've been talking about today, QA Wolf delivers unprecedented levels of test coverage and accelerates software development cycles. QA Wolf's multi-agent AI was built under the principle that humans need to be in the loop to deliver trustworthy and efficient results. You can learn more by heading to QAWolf.com and requesting a demo if you'd like to see what the AI looks like in action. Yuri, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Caleb, and thank you for the great conversation. It was my pleasure.
It's always a pleasure to chat with you, Yuri. And for everyone who's watching, if you want more conversations like these, you can head on over to QAWolf.com and look at our podcast, Wolfed, or you can search for the podcast where your podcasts are found. Thanks so much for joining us, and have a great day.